So, welcome back to my channel. It's been about 3 years since I recorded any videos, and today I was watching some of the old stuff that I had recorded for you all, and one of the last ones I did was called Many Parts, and my plan was to run you through the various Christian church experiences that I navigated when I was seeking, coming to Christ. So let me give you a little bit of background. I did mention that I was raised Catholic, and then there was a lot of family tragedy, and then I became an atheist. And to go into that a little bit, I was at my father's funeral when I was 14, and the Catholic priest was telling stories about the resurrection and the stone being rolled away from the tomb's entrance and an angel sitting there talking to Mary or whatever it was. Jesus was now alive and he wasn't dead anymore, and this was the good news, and it was all about the resurrection, and he was talking about this. And my dad's casket was right over there, because it was right up at the front of the church, and of course the family of the person who dies is usually in the front of the church. So we were all there, and I was looking at my dad's casket and listening to this story, and it was really, really making me mad. Now, granted, I was 14, but I was angry because just maybe a night before, my sister and I had this conversation. She was 7 years older than I was, and she and I were talking about the fact that Dad had died, and our mom had died 2 years previous to that. So she was saying, we were just talking, and I said, well, on the bright side, at least they're together in heaven. Mom and Dad are together. And she kind of said, I was like, well, in heaven. And she just sort of made a funny face and said, you don't really believe all that, do you? And I was like, believe all of what? She's like, well, all those stories that they teach you in the Bible about heaven and hell and Jesus and God and all that stuff. She's like, they're really pretty much just fairy tales and fables, and they teach you those things to give you hope and to teach you morals, and they're just stories, they're not real. Well, to my 14-year-old self, I received that and said, that makes a lot of sense, because it did sound kind of far-fetched, and I just rejected it from then on. And I was like, yeah, that's nonsense. And then when I'm sitting at my dad's funeral, like a day or so later, and the priest was talking about these things, I was just really mad. And I was like, don't be telling me stupid fables, which is exactly what I was thinking they were. Don't be telling me these stupid fables about somebody coming back to life and rolling the stone away from the cave. And it all was so ridiculous. And here, the truth of the matter is, people are dead, and they stay dead. And so I was mad, and I stayed mad for a while. And like I mentioned in a previous video, I went to a priest at one point because I think somebody must have been worried about me, because I became a non-believer and kept talking about not believing in God. So they suggested that I go talk to this priest, which I did. And he, proceeded to tell me that, yes, you do believe. But I didn't. So years went by. So, I was kind of a tough, angry teenager, and some years went by. I got married real fast. I wanted to start my own family because my own family was all broken up now, and every Christmas or whatever, you're going to your sister's husband's mother's house, and these things that just felt wrong, and it was all just very much of a bummer. And so I was an unbeliever, and I was ready to be married and have my own family really quick. So that happened. Got married very young at 20, started popping out babies at 21, and I had 4 kids. And by the time I was pregnant for my 4th, I was living in Alaska at the time, and that's when I started searching, because my marriage was in trouble, and I was having a very difficult time being married, and I got very spiritually hungry, and my brother was a black belt. One of my surviving brothers was a black belt, and he was into meditation and Buddhism and these sorts of things. So I started kind of looking into that, reading a lot of books, and I started to get very excited. And I thought something wonderful is going to happen in Alaska. Really super spiritual. But I thought like I was going to become a tree hugger, or I was going to have some profound spiritual experience. And so I started to go to things like I saw in the paper that there was a past life seminar in Fairbanks. So I was like, whoa, past life seminar, that sounds interesting. And it was like all about the truth and seeking the truth. And so I went to that, and nothing really happened, and I was kind of frustrated. And then, I was reading Shirley MacLaine books, and I was reading a lot of Eastern religious stuff, and Taoism and Buddhism, and the Tao Te Ching, and the Confucian says, and all these things. And, I was trying really hard to have some kind of connection spiritually. I was ready for it, and I was expecting something great to happen. And then a friend of mine in Alaska got born again, and he was a really close friend that used to come over every day for lunch, and we'd visit and talk. And he now couldn't talk about anything but Jesus, and had this revival that he had gone to, and how he was repenting and change his life. And I was bummed out because we were good friends, and I thought, I don't want a Jesus friend. Like, I didn't want to talk about all that stuff, and I didn't really want to hang out with him anymore. But I had already developed a relationship with him and really cared about him, so I had to kind of put up with it and listen to what he had to say. And so anyways, this is how the whole path to Christ started happening. And he was sharing a lot with me, and that's when I had this experience that I call it a vision, but I can't really explain it. It was very brief, super, super brief, but something happened to me, and from that moment on, I wanted to read all the red letters in the Bible, and I wanted to know who Jesus was, and I started reading all the red letters in the Bible and renting all the Jesus movies, and I basically became converted. And I was reading ravenously. I could not get enough of the New Testament. I couldn't get enough of the book of Acts, especially. I was really interested in how the early church acted and what happened with people when they got converted, and what was the church like, and what did their lives look like. And I learned so much in there that the main focal points that I got out of it was they got baptized, and they got together a lot, and they broke bread and did communion. And then when they were together, the idea was to preach the gospel and to share the gospel with other people and other people to get saved. It seemed kind of simple from what I was reading. So it's like I looked up from the Bible and I looked around outside and tried to figure out, well, what do I do in my time? And meanwhile, I had this neighbor across the street, and she was going to this Church of Christ, which is the first church experience that I was going to get into from my newfound faith. So I went with her, and they basically did preach the gospel. They talked about Jesus and him dying on the cross, and they talked about the resurrection and all these things that looked like, okay, this looks like how you do it, and they've got it down. And then after the service, they said, we're going to get together for a potluck, and feel free to stay, and blah blah blah. So I thought, okay, these are nice people, and they've got the gospel, and they preached it, and they seem to be on the right page according to what I've been reading. So I need to get baptized. I mean, I know I was baptized as a child, but now I'm kind of like a new believer or a convert, so I think I should get baptized right away. So I made an appointment with this pastor of her church, my neighbor's church, this Church of Christ, and this was exciting. So I show up the next night. I had an appointment to meet with him and talk to him, because my reason for doing this was I was ready to be baptized and make a public statement that, okay, I'm in. I'm ready. I'm ready to do the thing and follow Christ. So I get there with this meeting, and he has a chalkboard set up, and his wife was there, and he was very quizzical, okay, well, why are you here? What do you want? And I was like, well, I believe in Jesus, and I think the next step is for me to get baptized. And he said, okay, turn to Romans, blah, blah, blah. And when I turned there, it said, believe and be baptized, and you shall be saved. And he's like, and he made me read it to him. So I did. And then he was like, okay. And I was like, yeah. And he goes, what does that tell you? And I said, that believe and be baptized, so that's why I'm here. And he's like, right. Okay, turn to such and such. And so I turned to another scripture, and it's basically all these scriptures were about baptism. And I said, yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm ready to be baptized. And he said, but you don't understand. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, if you got in your car tonight and you went back home and you have not been baptized yet, are you going to heaven? And I said, yes. And he goes, why do you think you're going to heaven? I said, because I'm saved, because I believe in Jesus and that he died for my sins. And he's like, right. Well, turn to this scripture and read it again. And it was basically, believe and be baptized and you shall be saved. So he was tricky. He was like tricky. He was putting it up on a blackboard, and he was very adamant about this one point, that you don't understand that you're not saved until you're baptized. And I said, well, but I think I am, but either way, I'm here to be baptized, so aren't we going to do it? And he was like, I could dunk you under that water 100 times, but, if you don't have the right doctrine, you don't have the right faith, you don't understand, it's not going to do you any good. And I'm like, so you're not going to baptize me? He's like, no, I need you to do some more studying. And I was like, right, because you think if I die on the way home, I'm going to go to hell. And he's like, right. And I was like, okay. Well, thank you very much. This has been very interesting. And I got in the car, and I was starting to cry. Like, as soon as I got my door shut in the car and started driving, I'm like crying. And I'm leaving there just like, I don't understand, Lord. I don't understand. I went there to get baptized. I don't understand what's going on. And all of a sudden, I had this sense of like a great sort of fear for him, for that pastor, came over me, where it was just like, ooh, he's in trouble. Like, yeah, he's not, that ain't right. That's wrong. And it's not what he just did was very, very bad. And I was like, it's okay. I forgive him. I'm sorry. I let him off the hook. But wow, like, that's kind of a bummer, because I was all ready to go. And so the next day, when I was home in the morning, this pastor called me and said, hey, I just wanted you to listen to some tapes. I have a whole teaching about this, and I'd really like you to study this some more, look into it. And I said, I'm sorry, but you're not going to convince me that I'm not saved until I'm baptized. You're not going to convince me of that. I don't believe you. I don't believe that's what the word says or what it means. And, years later, I could give him a lot more examples, like the guy on the cross that said, hey, God, forgive me, and yelled at his other buddy there that was dying and said, hey, we deserve what we're getting. He doesn't, but remember me when you're in your kingdom. And Jesus said, this day you'll be with me in paradise. And he didn't grab him off the cross and stick him under the water and make sure he's saved first or get baptized first in order to get him. So I had plenty of examples later on that I could dispute this doctrine. But at the time, I was pretty young in the Lord, obviously. I'd just been reading a lot, but I didn't have all kinds of ammunition, nor did I know I needed it for people's different doctrines. But I politely declined his teaching, and, he basically said goodbye, like as though I'll never see you because you're going to hell. And that was that. So that was my experience with the church called the Church of Christ. Now, there were some other doctrines that my neighbor, who used to go to that church, and I used to debate and dispute a lot when we would go on long walks in Alaska, and we would talk all kinds of things about the Spirit and speaking in tongues and various things that I was reading and learning that she said, no, that's not, that doesn't happen anymore, blah, blah, blah. And we had a lot of disagreements. So I'll get into that in the next video, but that was my first church experience as a new believer. And there was much more fun stuff to come. So take care and stay tuned. Bye.